Hey, well, thanks so much for being here and tuning in. I guess I've never really done this kind of thing before. So I will say this about Jason Phillips. He's quite possibly one of the best pastors I know, just at being able to see people and whether on a stage playing guitar for the greatest punk band you've never heard of, the Teamsters, or just in the ways that he teaches or the ways that he walks with people. I've just seen him walk with dear friends, mentor dear friends, lead a nonprofit board that I got a chance to serve under his leadership. So it's cool to be able to follow up him. But my name's Steve Carter. I went to Hope for a few years in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I grew up in Southern California in Ventura County. And I was a part of a small a church, Camarillo Christian Church. And I had an amazing youth pastor who went to Hope, was a professor at Hope, and taught me a ton. When I went to college, I started interning at a church called Rock Harbor. And it was kind of just beginning in Costa Mesa, California. And it kind of grew pretty rapidly and felt like I got in on kind of the beginnings of that journey. And during that time, my parents came to faith and they moved to Grand Rapids, Michigan. So I still don't understand how you come to faith and then move to the Midwest, but they did it. And I went with them in 1999, and there was a church that had just got started called Mars Hill. And I found myself kind of there at the very beginning. And it grew overnight. And so the first month, it was about 3,000 people. And it was in there that I felt God was calling me to go into ministry, went back to California to Hope. And when I graduated from Hope, I had the chance to go back and be on staff at Mars Hill. I was there first as an intern for their founding pastor and lived in his basement and learned a ton from Rob, and then kind of moved into student ministries. And then in 2009, decided to leave the Midwest and go back to California to be a teaching pastor at Rock Harbor. Actually started a campus in Fullerton, in downtown Fullerton. And so I've kind of had all these like unique experiences, but while I was in Grand Rapids, I met Bill's son-in-law, Bill Hybels' son-in-law, and he became one of my closest friends on the planet. And through him met Bill, and Bill became a mentor. And so for the past 15 years, Bill's been just a coach, a mentor. And in 2011, 2012, he called and said, "Hey, for the last 10 or so years, you've been saying you've been looking for this, this, and this. And I have a position that I can't shake your name and from, and in my prayer times, you keep coming up. So would you come and finish this run with me?" And that was basically it. And so I joined the staff to be a director of evangelism and a teacher at large. And so I just give you that kind of context one, just to kind of let you know, I didn't grow up at Willow. I grew up in a smaller church that was really an amazing place with some really great families and great pastors. And then I've been able to kind of be a part of some of these churches from the very beginning, these church plants that grew, and got to start a campus. And now I'm here at Willow. And so anything that you want to ask me is total fair game. I'll shoot you straight, whatever you want to know. But what I wanted to focus in for the first like maybe 25, 30 minutes is just a little bit about how our organization runs. Willow's 42 years old. Many of you might know the story. Bill grew up in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and his father was really into the produce business. They had a ton of acreage and a really booming business, and Bill was basically set to take that over when kind of God just prompted him to, whispered him to go into the ministry. And it was based out of some teachings that he was hearing in his college. And he was going to school at Trinity International University outside of Chicago. there was a professor, Gilbert Bilzikian, known around here as Dr. B. And Dr. B just was sharing with Bill how the local church is the hope of the world. And from Acts 2, just kind of seized him. And that's when he basically gave up the company, not taking over for his dad, but really feeling like I got to birth the church. And so they birthed the church in a movie theater, and it was just kind of something that happened, and it grew and it grew. And the more that I've come to know the story of Willow, you drive on the campus today and it's, 90 some acres. It's 100,000 square feet. It's just massive. But what I often forget is the creation story of this church and how it began with a whole bunch of just college students who wanted to see Jesus be relevant and be made known in a place that could really embody what they were understanding to be true about the Gospels, the book of Acts, and the Spirit kind of being fleshed out through them. And one of my favorite stories is none of these founding families, there were 4 of them. I'm actually next door neighbors to one of them. And I go over to their house and I sit in their garage and they pour me a glass of wine and they just tell me stories, and it's just amazing. But one of my favorite stories is they would go door to door selling tomatoes. Bill's dad would donate tomatoes and they'd sell it. And that's kind of basically how they funded their rent, which was the movie theater. And then a piece of property, 60, 70 acres, became available. And this church of 600, 700 was like, let's try and get this. And everyone thought they were crazy. Like, what are you doing? They didn't have enough money to do it. And so the only way that the bank would give them a loan was if people actually took out personal loans. And 4 years into this church, 272 people showed up at a bank, Suburban National Bank in Palatine, Illinois, and they took out personal loans to buy the property and to build the first building. And so I tell you that story just because for me, it's those people right from the very beginning, they were owners. And some of those values from the very, very beginning have really carried through. One of those values is just around kind of Dr. B and Bill's relationship, and I'll get to that in a little bit later. But even just the sense of evangelism, making the good news your life's work, and really being a place that is so willing and able to invite. And that just has become kind of the story of Willow. And probably every few years, as they began to get more kind of dive deeper into the New Testament, more values were added. And so what I'd love to do is kind of just read you through our values, show you how that plays out in our vision, show that how that kind of fleshes out through our organization, and then kind of some of the culture and practices that kind of happen on a day-to-day basis. And then I felt like I'd probably end with a little bit of the succession conversation that I think maybe some of you might have heard about, but was asked to kind of share a little bit about. So everything, because Bill is our leader, lead pastor, senior pastor, everything's pretty much driven by vision and leadership. If you've ever met Bill, the guy is a walking evangelist, high challenge. He's the best coach I've ever been around. He just wants to help you grow deeper and make you better. But his fingerprints are obviously all over this church. And I'm just going to read kind of, these are our rallying cries. We say, as we build Acts 2 churches locally and globally, our rallying cries are this. Number 1, help people far from God come to faith in Jesus Christ. Number 2, to fight injustice, work for peace, and extend compassion to people in need. Number 3, build a radically inclusive biblical community that serves and lives in reconciliation with one another and with God. And I would say this, that 12 years ago, Willow was 98% white. And today our diversity numbers are going. We're trying to figure out what does it look like to see Willow really kind of prepare for what heaven and eternity will be. And we believe in multiculturalism, but we are also trying to not just kind of have different people on stage, but we're actually trying to say, hey, how do we have a congregation, a leadership, an executive team that really just is a theology of our footprint. So number 4, we're striving to become fully devoted followers of Jesus Christ. Number 5, we enable women and men to serve according to their gifts. It's been Willow's mantra since basically, I think, year 2, that we believe that both men and women have been given spiritual gifts. And so organizationally, women can be pastors, women can be preachers. You'll hear me in a moment talk about how part of the succession plan is a co-pastoring model, but having a female, Heather Larson, being our lead pastor. And it's pretty exciting for our church and for our community, and I think also for the larger church. Number 6, to steward resources generously, wisely, and sacrificially. Bill's Dutch, so it's pretty amazing. We don't overspend. It's just kind of a cultural thing that we have. There's no debt that we hold as a church, which is pretty unique for most mega churches. They're millions of dollars in debt, but just the way that Bill's kind of created the budget, we tend just to save a ton. And we also have about 7% of the money that comes in every week is put aside in something called a winds of the Spirit. And it's whenever we sense that God is up to something, we want to give money or create a new ministry, we have money set aside each year. And so we really only function off of 93% of our budget. 7% is just there. So again, that's just good leadership from Bill. Number 7, we gather regularly for biblical teaching, corporate worship, and prayer. And then 8, we depend upon and courageously obey the Holy Spirit. So these are kind of our 8 values, our rally cries. And our elder model, we're an elder-led church. It's based on the policy governance. So these are our end statements. These are our goals. And each of these 8 goals have some clear metrics that go along with it regarding baptisms, membership, those people getting plugged into small groups, whatever we feel like the goals are. And our elders, because of policy governance, can't speak into the actual how. They can only talk about the goal. And so it allows them to be pretty high level to help us keep continuing to move the organization, the church, the ship forward and not get caught up in a ton of the details. But they meet monthly, and it's a pretty great thing. So our church is constantly talking about vision, and we just basically organize and orient all of our ministries under vision. We just launched a vision called Forward, and we're trying to do 3 things in 2018. First one is fighting for every family. 2, we want to call it the best in every Christ follower. And 3, we want to risk boldly to reach those in our community. And so underneath those 3 are teams assigned that are building metrics and goals. And then we will have staffing kind of fall under those 3 to actually achieve. Now, if you're sitting here and you're probably listening to this, you're going, well, how does this play out with our kids ministry? How does this play out with our student ministry? Those three fight for your family. If it's a junior high ministry, you're saying, okay, well, how are we preparing the parents? How are we helping the parents? Number 2, if it's called the best, how are we calling it the best in these students? Or if it's about reaching, how are they actually risking and creating opportunities to live invitationally so that more and more students can encounter the good news? So all of this plays under, and we raise money for it, we organize around it, and we create clear metrics. So that's kind of a vision in a nutshell. I think 4 or 5 minutes. The way our staff, is this helpful? Is this like what you guys are wanting? Just keep going. I can't even hear you. Okay, I'll just keep going. So, where we're organized. Oh, go ahead.
I said, you're doing great. Thank you.
Okay, great. There's a sense of, oh man, I can't see anyone. So this is so new. But so.
You want me to stand in front of you and nod for you?
Oh yeah, I see that nod, Larry. Thanks. No, so we're elder led, and then underneath that we have an executive team. The executive team is filled with 6 different people, and And underneath the executive team, you have your leadership team, and the leadership team are primarily ministry directors on one side. And then we also have another team, which would be all of our lead pastors. Just to get it out of the way, we've got 8 campuses, somewhere ranging, I don't know, whatever the number is, doesn't matter. But like we've got those kind of 2 teams, and then about 400 staff people that fall under those teams. We're really focused on our staff. I've never been in a culture that has developed me more than coming to Willow. There are faculty that they bring in. There's development that they have. And part of the uniqueness, I think, that I've seen in a large church compared to my times, whether starting Rock Harbor Fullerton or whether being a part of Camarillo Christian Church as an intern, has been the ability to specialize around your unique spiritual gifts. And the church is so big on spiritual gifts. And so we develop towards your gifts. And obviously, if there's areas that you need to grow in, we're going to help you. But I don't have administrative gifts. I bet, Tony was probably like, I bet a lot of the Hope staff was probably fearful that I was actually going to be here on time because my administrative gifts are terrible. But Willow's not going to put me in a role for administration. And so even in the succession piece, they have created a role that is just true to, I feel like, how God's wired me. So my job is content and congregation today and moving forward. I get to focus in on pastoring people, meeting with our congregation, helping them take steps, meeting with just everyday people, meeting with key leaders, key donors, just the full kind of scale of who our church is. And then also on the other side, being really intentional to develop and raise up the teachers within Willow. So 70 teachers on our stages, I'm just developing them. So whether they teach in the kids ministry, I'm trying to help them get better, trying to make sure that our values are consistent, trying to make sure that good theology is taught, and then kind of overseeing all of our series, whether on our Wednesday night program or our weekend programs as well. So that's kind of my role. But again, it's just a little picture of how much spiritual gifts matter towards how we organize. And that's just a unique thing. I think in the larger context, the scale provides you the chance to specialize. And there's some pros to that. Obviously, there's some cons to that. But where I was in another role in Rock Harbor Fullerton at the very beginning, and I felt like I was doing so many things, and many that were outside of my gifting, which was emotionally draining for me personally. So to have this opportunity here has been really, really great. Part of being here at Willow is learning to be action-oriented, to learn that you have a goal, you have a target, and you have to be clear with that goal and to go after it. And so twice a year, every ministry will present what we call a Thrive dashboard, because we want to help to see and really give our staff the gift of how are you doing? I think we've all been in those places, whether as a communicator, as a pastor, as a leader, wondering, is what I'm doing actually working? And what are the actual goals and right metrics to tell you that you are doing well? Is it just attendance? Is it just giving? We believe that it's way more than that. So what we do is each ministry creates a dashboard. And inside that dashboard, it will say, hey, here's what our goal is. And here are the drivers that are necessary for us to hit those goals. And then here are the metrics to tell us if we are healthy or not healthy or thriving. And we believe whether it's not healthy or thriving, all of it tells a story. All of it provides an opportunity for learning. And so we are incessantly tinkering with trying to figure out how do we get to the thing beneath the thing that will help us discover why is this ministry thriving? Why is this ministry healthy? And why is this one just kind of stuck? And if we can figure out the story, I think it helps us all be able to move our church forward and move our church ahead. So twice a year, we present those dashboards. I have one for teaching. There's one for our Promised Land, our Care Center. I think there's 52 of these dashboards that are presented. And there's a Thrive team. And you present your dashboard, and they really ask you questions. It's just, are those the right metrics? Are those the right goals? Because if you don't have the right goals, it's going to make you do, I think, dumb things. Sometimes if people's metrics are just about growing, we got to grow more and more and more, you're going to do things that I think are going to probably stretch you, push you, that maybe your character's not ready for. It's just trying to get people in the room. And we don't want just to try and do whatever we can to get people in the room. We want to make sure we have the right goals. So it's a kind of a spiritual process that our teams go on. We bring that before the Thrive team. It's a team of 5 people. They're not all of them are on executive team or leadership team. They're just 5 people who are discerning, who love our church, and who are good at asking, I think, really, really great intentional questions to draw out what is the thing that you are chasing or going after. And then at the end of the ministry year, we meet again with that same team, and we grade ourselves, our ministry. Hey, how did we feel like we did? How do we hit our goals? Did we hit our objectives? And what's the story that we need? Sometimes there's ministries that are healthy, and if they had just one more staff person, they'd be thriving. There are some ministries that are not producing at maybe the levels that they hoped, because 2 of their staff people, there is just so much friction and it's just spilling over to the team. We need to know that story. And so the Thrive process allows us to go through, hey, how's the ministry doing? And then connected to that Thrive process is also just a talent review. And that's where we kind of look at our staff, all 400 of them. We see where are the areas that they need to develop, where can they grow, where's their growth edge, where's the part of them that feels stuck, maybe spiritually, maybe emotionally, maybe it's with their gifts, and what kind of development can they give them. I don't know if you know this, but GE, General Electric, we went up to meet with their kind of leadership team in Crotonville, and that's just their development school. And they spend $1 billion, $1 billion with a B, every year on just developing their key staff. And when we heard that as a team, we're like, that's $1 billion people. That's $1 billion just for their key people. And we looked and said, how much are we putting towards developing our key volunteers, our key staff, and our entire staff? And so that just really helped us go, man, how do we help really shape, form, develop, and really maximize the gifts that God has given and the players that God has put on our team. And it's been amazing. I mean, I think I feel like I've grown more in the 5 years that I've been here. I think a lot of times people will say, I wish I was developed. And then all of a sudden you get into a culture that's built on development, and it's vulnerable. I mean, because you have people coaching you. You have people who are drawing out the best in you and really challenging you, and challenging your theology, or challenging your perspective, or challenging your approach. And it really creates and draws out for, I think, a certain type of person, the best. And it's been something that's been really, really good to me personally. Underneath that, those Thrive dashboards is you've got what's the goal? How are you doing? What are the drivers that are going to allow you to hit the goal? And then you've got these win projects, like what's important now? Like, how do you win? And then we plan it out. We have dates. We get strategic. And then every 2 months, every staff person has to put something together called a 6x6. And what are the 6 most important things that the staff person is working on in the next 6 to 8 weeks. So 6 by 6. And that's something that they walk through with their manager, something that we talk about. I know my 6 by 6. This isn't my office. It was just a quiet space around Willow that I could just step in. But if you were in my office, my 6 by 6 are images that I frame, that I put on my wall. I change the images, and I see them. I'm more visual minded, but those 6 by 6 are important. So for me, it's obviously centered around preaching, making sure that we develop a great series up for Easter. So, hey, overseeing that Holy Week journey. And the thing that Bill will always coach us on the 6 by 6 is it's got to get you out of bed. It's got to get you up and get you moving, get you excited to know that you're on the staff. God's given you these gifts. How are you giving the best hours of your day, your work day, towards these things to help move the church forward? And so there's a lot of activistic language that's just great, and we see it in our culture. So that 6 by 6 is really important. And then a lot of times people will know, hey, these are the 6 things that I'm working on, but somehow it doesn't seem to result in actual results. And you start digging a little bit deeper and you realize, oh, someone might be really clear on the 6 things that they're working on, but they've never scheduled it. And so schedule is probably one of the most sacred things around Willow, just your family time, something we call chair time, like how are you spending time with God, and your kind of the energy bursts. Where do you have these bursts of 60 to 90 minutes where you can just pour your attention and focus towards one of these 6 initiatives that you feel will help you move the church forward? So energy bursts, I think, are really, really great. Again, that's one of the gifts of being in a larger church that I've experienced, because sometimes I didn't feel like I could block out my schedule when I was at Camarillo or when I was at another church, because I felt like it was tyranny of the urgent. I got to do this, and I got to handle this funeral, and I got to go to this hospital visit. I got to do it. And sometimes my teaching would suffer, or sometimes I just had to take care of this. But when you have more specialized, it allows you to kind of stay focused, which is good for me. Another part for us that's really important is just our culture. And this is something that before I came to Willow, there's a little bit of like horror stories. We decided, our HR team decided, hey, let's really just take a kind of a litmus test of how our staff is doing, how much trust they have of leadership. And so I think it was about 12 years ago, they did a kind of a how are we doing? And the culture came back as toxic. So that was the outside consultant's view, like this is a toxic culture, which was really, really good to get that baseline, because really the only way that place that you could go was up. And so we've committed so much over the last 12 years to really working on building trust, really creating clear vision, clear why, clear development opportunities, listening. And over the last, I think 6 years, Willow has been named the top Christian workplace, one of the top Christian workplaces done by Al Lopez, and same one who did it 12 years ago. And so to be able to see that progress, and our HR directors, like, we will never, ever go back. And so we're just people who fight through the funk. We're the people who want to make sure that people are in the right fits. We want to give people the right support. We want to help develop people, and we want to unleash them to really help move our goals ahead. So that's kind of like organizationally how we function. I will say one thing about our regionals that are pretty unique. Our regionals, when I was part of Rock Harbor at its kind of mothership campus, and then I launched Rock Harbor Fullerton, it was live teaching, live worship. We were disconnected in a lot of ways from the mothership. The things that kept us together were our values, and that we taught on the same key verse most weeks out of the year. But other than that, we could do our own thing. What's unique about our model is our regionals take the teaching from South Barrington, but I'd say
80% of the time they play it the following week. So the regional pastors love it because then they can just edit Bill and me down to whatever length they want us to be at. So one of our regional pastors at Willow Chicago goes, Steve, you give the best 22-minute messages ever. And I'm like, I usually preach for like 36. And they're like, oh yeah, that's the power of edit. We just edit so you are so good for 22. So we give a lot of freedom, and the majority of our regionals are in building programs or have just launched new facilities. But Bill set the lead pastors of these regionals up to really be leaders, and they're building their staff, they're building their culture, they're building their donors, they're raising funds. It's not mothership dependent. They are doing their own thing. So if someday they were to spin off, they could do that. We have this mantra that we're better together. I don't see that happening, but just the way that Bill set that up, I thought was pretty genius. So that's kind of like how we are structured and function. And then let me maybe just talk about succession stuff. Bill's been kind of at the helm for 42 years since he planted the church. And about 6 years ago, one of the elders came, and he's 66 now. But one of the elders came and said, hey, you're probably not going to be here, for 25 more years. Have you thought about succession? And that kind of led to some honest conversations, and really they began this process of external, internal. And so when I showed up at Willow 5.5 years ago, they had just done kind of a internal, who's interested, raise your hand. And so my first one-on-one meeting with Bill was like, hey, do you want to add your name to this? And I'm like, no, that's like the dumbest thing ever. Like, I just got here. How arrogant will that look? And so Bill just said, hey, pray about it. And then Bill said, hey, I think you should do it for development. And because he was like a mentor for obviously 15 now, but 10 at that time, I said, sure, I'll do it. And I literally just thought it was going to be development. And for the next few years, it was this unique process of growing as a communicator, seeing what I could do, and then seeing honestly what I couldn't do at this scale and at this kind of size, and then also what I didn't want to do. And so I remember probably 2.5 years ago, we were in a meeting, and we had some outside consultants coming in, and who were just kind of coaching and asking a ton of questions. And it was the first time ever, because one of them said to Bill, like, hey, what is it you do with your 60 hours a week that you work? And Bill just started with kind of talking, and this guy started writing on these like sticky notes and started putting them up all over the wall. And he just started adding hours. And at the end of it, we realized he was spending about 35 to 40 hours a week on teaching, 30 to 40 hours a week on leadership. And he also had the WCA, the Global Leadership Summit, that he was kind of like putting in time to time. And we all just kind of looked at each other when we saw the actual hours to it. And then the guy who was a consultant, he's not even a Christ follower, which is just awesome. And we've been like praying for this guy. And I think he's really close, but we've just been praying so much for him. But like, he just looks at us and he goes, who do you think in the world would like want Bill's life? I don't think anybody would. And you could see like Bill's eyes kind of like open up a little bit. And he just at that model realized, wow, there's this institutional, organizational leadership. And then there's this content, congregation, teaching component. And as he just began to pray, he realized, man, to the left of him was Heather, who's our executive pastor, who's driving ministry forward, and she's incredible at what she does. Like she kind of chairs the Thrive team. She's just gets stuff done. And then was looking to the right, and he's like, here's Carter. he'll talk to anybody and loves dreaming up and reading and studying and teaching. And I think the first time he just said, wow, what if we were to do this shared model? And it was different. And he presented this idea, and the elders took about 13 months. There's a ton of interviews. I wouldn't recommend, if any of you are thinking about succession, to do it for 5+ years. It's just tiring. It was a tiring experience, but it was one of the most formational experiences I've ever been on. One, to go deeper with Jesus, two, to have opportunities to grow in the gifts that God's given to me, and also to acknowledge my own blind spots. And that's again the gift of just being in a larger context at Willow, where we had the space to be able to do that. And so in October, Bill announced, and our church was fired up, that Heather Larson, she will be our lead pastor. And she's, I think, 5 years older than me. And then that I would be our lead teaching pastor. And that will go into effect October of 2018. So kind of organizationally, that's where we're at. We're like, one of the things that's true about Willow is the Dr. B pouring into Bill. And it's one of the things I love about Hope. Dr. Grana, Paul Alexander, Dr. Alexander, they've been just incredible men in my life. But those mentoring relationships, and Bill's been, just an advocate, a coach, just like a spiritual father in so many ways. And what I'm excited is he's not just bailing, he's not just leaving, but he's someone that's going to be around, that he's not going to have like his same office or anything, but I'll get to ask him if he wants to come teach, or I'll get to run series ideas by him. He's not just getting on a plane and moving somewhere far, far away. This is still going to be his church, and it's going to be fun to watch Dr. B, the way he poured into Bill, to watch Bill become Dr. B for Heather and me. So it's really exciting, and we're pretty amped. And I don't know. I'm not unaware of the illusion that it's going to be so different, and that Bill's been an incredible leader, but I am really expecting to see how God is going to work through our team, our staff. I feel like our staff is more united than ever before. We just had a staff meeting Wednesday, and it was like ministry time. It's like Holy Spirit ministry time. People were standing and praying for one another. And I just feel like, man, if we can stay united, and if the enemy is going to try and kind of tell other stories and say that we can't do it without Bill, I feel like if we stay rooted and established in the love of Christ, filled by the Spirit, doing the work of the kingdom, I feel like it's going to be a fun ride. So that's kind of who we are as a church. Hopefully that's helpful. Feel free if you have any questions.